Good morning. I'm Sandra with PlumGoodQuilting.com, and this morning I've decided to work on a project that I think there's been an awful lot of questions about, and that's how do I work on objects or appliques that are much larger than the mat. Um, it's actually not as hard as it might seem. The first time it was posed to me, I was a new Silhouette Cameo person, and I have to tell you, I had no clue. So I just started deciding I was going to figure out a way to do this. This happens to be a Kim deal pattern, and I have a causes fabric from Moda that I've put in each piece for the applique, just playing around with it, deciding, auditioning, and it's quite large. You can tell the pieces are large, and I think it measures like 16 something by 22, which is much larger than my mat. Well, first of all, if you notice, any one of these pieces can be unassembled and put on the mat and cut on freezer with freezer paper or fabric or however you want to do your cuts, because none of these pieces individually are larger than the mat. But when it comes to placement, am I going to use my eye to get these perfectly in place? Because I use a grid when I work on the mat, and it does give me a much better sense of where everything goes. So in this case, I thought I'd show you how I take care of this problem, and it's really um, it's really nothing actually, and I have to laugh sometimes because I don't know why it didn't come to me much sooner. This project is going to require the grid because you're going to want to make sure this is centered. If I had this over here, I would bring it over here to the align window and center this on the page, so it's automatically centered. Now I make sure that I have the grid, and the grid is right here where I have show grid checked. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is go over here and get the knife tool. It just so happens my software likes me to hit the eraser first, so that's what I do. But I'm going to click on knife, put my knife at the very top of the mat in the center blade section there, center line section, sorry. Now I've drugged it down all the way to the bottom of the mat where the line meets. It's going to process while it takes these apart. And when it's through cutting through the middle of them, the only thing I have to worry about now is basically how am I going to get these two apart, because remember they're going to be ungrouped. So I like to have lots of room to do this. So I generally start my arrow bottom left and drag it around over past the center and go all the way up to the top and hope that I've gotten all my pieces. Now when I right click, I'm going to group these with the drop down menu. I'm going to reach for these to pull them apart, and I just so happen to have managed to work that out. So we're going to do the same thing with the other side and get all the way around them. Uh-oh, looks like I didn't make that work. Okay, it's not always the easiest thing to get all the way around it. There we go. I think that worked. Now that we've got both grouped, I want you to notice that after I get rid of the grid, because it always makes things easier to see, I can pull this over here, pull this onto the mat, and this is not bigger than the mat. I could have made it bigger actually, because I could have divided it through the middle as well and enlarged all of this top section and separate bottom section to be as wide and long as the mat, which I don't think I'm going to be doing appliques that large, but this solved my problem. Now, what I'm going to do with this is make a placement grid for this. I've highlighted it or selected it, Okay, and it's ready now to sketch. I'm going to lay paper on my mat, and in my case, usually what I use is a rolled paper I have for a roll printer that I have, but you can buy rolled paper. Um, I've even gone to dollar store and got rolls of paper and laid it on my cutting mat and cut it at 12 inches wide, and then whatever length I needed it, and in this case 24, because you cover your whole mat, and lay it down on there. Make sure that you have it on there well so it can be sketched on. Go over to your knife tool, the right top, click on that. You're going to make sure that you have an intricate cut here that cuts all of your lines. The only difference is we're not going to cut these pieces because you can see they cross over each other. We're going to sketch them with our sketch pen, or we can also put it in our pen holder, where we could use something like a Sharpie in the pen holder. Whatever it is we'd like to draw with, even pencil, if that's what you choose to use. I like a nice dark line because I'm going to be using this on my large light box, so that when it's all ready to assemble and put on my fabric, I can lay this paper down with all these lines on it, and I will have both of these, this one on the right and this one on the left, sketched on the paper and taped together. Now, once that whole thing is put together and um, ready to trace over, I will have both of these pieces put together just like they originally were. I'm going to see if I can do that. I can use an arrow key usually and get it about where I need it. Then I would tape both of those pieces together, make sure that they're ready um, to lay down on my um, light box. And once I get them on the light box, then I'm going to lay my fabric on top and straighten it. And I can see now that I'm ready to just place each one of those individual pieces that I've prepared on top of this, or I can actually trace it on my fabric at this point. But I've never done it that way. I always make sure that my pieces are ready and that they can be laid on top and uh, put down ready for. Usually, for a large design like this. I must explain this. For a large design, I have usually done these with freezer paper or foundation paper, whichever I'm going to use. And I have already got each individual piece um, turned on the freezer paper or turned on the foundation, and they are ready to lay on top of the fabric. Then I put basting glue on the back of each object and lay them down and make sure that they're laid to stay until I can get all of the work done, however I'm going to stitch them down. Something this large that's on a wall quilt, I'm probably going to put it on the machine and use a tiny zigzag stitch with invisible thread or matching thread, and go around every object with uh, a 1 width zigzag and a 1.5 length zigzag, and I'll be through with this in just a few minutes. So this is how I work this out, and each individual time that we work on these, we have to make sure that we do whatever's necessary to get our objects together and on that fabric so that we can make our beautiful applique. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope that you can find a way to make your applique work for you with the Silhouette Cameo.